Somehow it's August, and it's time for July wrap up. So I have my AirPod in. Hopefully this will help with some of the noise. My husband is downstairs having a very rambunctious D&D session. And I couldn't wait till tomorrow either because he has another session tomorrow. So if you hear loud laughter and loud talking, they're having fun downstairs. I can't fault him for that. I'm just gonna film this and see how it goes. So July, we have stats. Let's go. Okay, my stats are on my laptop here. You know what? I'm gonna hold it here and try to maybe look forward to you. Okay, so in July, I read a total of 17 books. 5 of those were comic books, comic ebooks. 4 of them were ebooks. 2 were physical manga books, and 6 were physical novels. Now, out of those, those numbers don't count DNF books, and I decided to keep them as part of the stats this month because I DNF'd a lot, and a lot of those I got pretty far into, so I DNF'd a total of 6 books, which I will briefly talk about as well. Out of the books I completed, we're going to genres, so 4 were fantasy, 3 were general literature, 2 were horror, 1 sci-fi, 3 superhero, which is what I generally put Marvel and DC Comics into. 1 was thriller, and 3 were urban fantasy / paranormal fantasy, grouping them kind of together. As for ratings, not a great month. If you watched my last weekly wrap up, you can see why. The average was a 3.5. So I had 1 book that was 1 star, 1 book that was 2 stars, 5 books that were 3 stars, 5 books that were 3.5 stars, 1 book that was 4.5 stars, and 4 books that were 5 stars. So really average middling month this month. Now for country, I kind of try to keep track of where the author is from, if that's obvious. So 2 were from Japan, was the manga obviously. 12 were from the United States, 1 from England, 1 from Palestine, and 1 from Australia. Now I very loosely track diversity, and I track essentially if the characters or the world, whatever, is BIPOC in some way, has LGBTQIA rep, and is own voices rep. So I do this, and there's a caveat. Stuff like manga, I don't count as diverse, even though it is diverse to my experience and my typical reading. The mangaka and the characters and everything, they're all Japanese. The manga artist is Japanese. It's being released in Japanese for a Japanese, originally for a Japanese audience. So nothing about the characters or the author or anything in the world is generally, for the most part, is diverse in that sense. The manga I read this month was diverse, and we'll get to that. So of diverse, only 29% of the books I read counted diverse in some fashion. That is very low for me, which is really weird. Although thinking about it, maybe not. So 5 were BIPOC in some way, 9 had LGBTQIA rep, and 4 were own voices. Now for own voices tends to be a little lower because I don't count own voices unless I know that the author very particularly specifically counts themselves as some kind of marginalized identity. So age of books, the oldest book I read is from 2015. The newest were 2024 releases. Author familiarity, so 2 of these books were debut novels. 6 were authors that I'm reading for the first time, they're new to me, and 9 were authors I have read before. Y'all, MacBooks are heavy. Let's see, how did I get these books? 1 book was an ARC, an advanced reader's copy that I got. 3 were from the library, either physical or ebooks. 8 were owned that I purchased, and 5 were from subscription services, so Kindle Unlimited, Marvel Unlimited, stuff like that. So yeah, those are my stats for the month. So let's just get on to the books. Not the best reading month, but we had some hits, thankfully. So, highs and lows, as always. Now, for the purposes of my wrap-up, I am going to go through everything in rating order, starting with 1-star DNFs, going all the way to my 5 stars. That way we end on a high note. And a lot of these books I have talked about at length, and instead of making this video 45 minutes long, I'm just going to point you to videos where I have talked about certain books at length. I will link them down below very clearly, so if you want to learn more about the books that I recommend in another video, I will tell you what that video was. Or just like look in the comments down below. I'm going to very clearly spell out where links to where I have talked about specific books. So first we're going to talk about my very unfortunate DNF stack, and that's all of this right here, plus one audiobook. And I'm counting it this time because I actually did get pretty far in a lot of these, which sucks when you have to like set them down and DNF them, especially when you purchased all of them. So first, we have Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. I did go into depth in a previous weekly wrap-up, so I will link that down below. Next, I have The Outside by Ada Hoffman, a sci-fi novel. I also went into depth into why I DNF'd this in a previously weekly wrap-up. That will be down below. Next, I have The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. I did not get too far into this. This is in 3 parts, and I finished part 1, so okay, maybe a good chunk into this. This is a sci-fi novel, and I did speak about this at length in a video down below. Next, I have The Space Between Worlds. This is probably the one I got the least into, even though about 100 pages. No, I take that back. The next one is. I did talk about this at length, and I will link that down below. And lastly, I have A Fate Inked in Blood, which is very beautiful. Like, this blue is beautiful. This is the one I got the least into, probably about 60 pages, and I do talk about that in another video down below. So, quite a lot of DNFs, unfortunately, but I've talked about them before, so I won't go into them at length again here. So, let us move on to the books I actually read. So we're starting with my one-star book of the month, and that is The Practice, The Horizon, and The Chain by Sofia Samatar. I have talked about this before. Did not like this novella, sci-fi novella. I will link that down below. I really dislike this. For me, on a 1-star, it's like, I just kind of hated the reading experience. So, unfortunately, we had a 1-star this month. Link down below if you want to hear more about that. Next is my 2-star book. That is a graphic novel called The Closet by James Tynion IV. This is a very short horror comic series that was only 3 issues and combined into one graphic novel, and I read that graphic novel on Hoopla. I love James Tynion IV, but this is probably one of the most disappointing things I've read from him. I have talked about this in the past in a weekly wrap-up, and I will link that down below. Okay, for the 3-star novels, I'm going to go first through the ones that I don't have physically, so I don't forget about them. The first of which is The Last One by Will Dean. This is a thriller novel about a woman who goes on a cruise on vacation for the first time with her partner. She wakes up the first morning on the cruise, and all of the passengers on the ship have disappeared. And we follow her as she tries to figure out what has happened. I did go into depth in this in a previous video, link it down below, just as everything else. But I read this one because my husband and I and a bunch of our friends are going on a cruise in middle to the end of September, so very excited about that, just getting the mindset. Shockingly, this did not turn me off the cruise. I'm still very excited to go. So a very interesting thriller novel. It does have a very big reveal that the entire book hinges on, so if you're not feeling it at first, when you just read until you get to the reveal. And even though I won't tell you what it is, I promise once you hit it, you will know. You will 100% know exactly what I'm talking about when you reach that part in the book. And then from there, decide if the book is what you want to keep on reading or not. So I enjoy it for the thriller it is, but I think it went on a little too long. The character work was a little too tedious for me. So, enjoyed it, but didn't really like the characters a lot. The reveal kind of could have gone really badly or really great and just kind of fell in a middling place for me. So 3 stars. My next 3-star is Sleep in Peace by Ilona Andrews. This is actually book 2 in the Innkeeper Chronicles. I also read book 1 this month. I have talked about both at length, so I will link that down below. This is a series where it's a paranormal urban fantasy where all of the paranormal creatures are actually aliens. Vampires, werewolves, they all have alien origins, and the main character runs an inn, which is kind of like way stations for all, like neutral ground way stations for all these aliens who visit Earth can stay in. There's magic, there's a tiny sprinkling of romance. it's becoming a little bit more promising in terms of liking it, but first book I'm going to mention in my 3.5 stars, this was 3, so I'm hoping it picks up a little bit more. There was a lot of promise towards the end of this, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that this will start becoming more of, like, all urban fantasy is kind of comfort reading for me. I love the genre. I love the conventions of the genre, so it feels comfortable to me. But this is kind of like, it's teetering, it's seesawing on whether I'm going to continue with the series. So book 3, a lot is going to hinge on book 3. All right, next 3-star was X-Force Volume 3 by Benjamin Percy. This is part of my larger Marvel X-Men Mutants read that I'm doing to catch up with the Marvel Universe X-Men. Talked about this at length in my previous weekly wrap-up, so I will link that down below. Okay, next 3-star read I have is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is just straight up contemporary literature book about 2 characters who kind of like were friends as children and then kind of reconnected in college. They make video games together. They have ups and downs, joys, tragedy, etc. I thought it was okay, and I kind of just ended this just kind of like, okay, so what? Like, I wish I cared more about them, but the characters kind of felt a little insufferable. I just, yeah, it has Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, obviously reference to Macbeth. I love that soliloquy. The art on the cover has a big influence on the characters in a video game they make. This is The Wave of Kanagawa, which is one of my favorite art pieces of all time. It should have been aimed right at me, right? But no. I did talk about this at length in the past, and that link is below. My last 3-star is 5 Broken Blades by My Corland, another Sprayed Edges book. I talked about this at length last week. In a nutshell, this is a story where it says 5 broken blades, but there's 6 main characters. These 6 characters come together all because they have the same mission to assassinate the tyrant king of this land. I think at one point, the amount of characters, every single character gets point of view chapters, and I think the amount of characters really took over the story, didn't really allow a lot of room to breathe. Like the first third maybe, where we're only following 3 or 4 characters, it really gave them a lot of room to breathe. We were introduced to these characters and it was really working well. I really liked Sora, one of the main first characters that we're introduced to. I loved her background, her story. I thought it was so interesting. I think this could have benefited from being mainly about her and her story. Could have been a much better, very different book. But yeah, super fast-paced fantasy romance. Not really for me. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't really for me. So yeah, unfortunately, very pretty book, but it was 3 stars. All right, we're on to 3.5, and I had 5 3.5 books. The first 2 were digital, so we're going to talk about, or just mention, X-Men Volume 3 by Jonathan Hickman. I talked about this a lot in my last weekly wrap-up. Very seesaw kind of situation for me. I'm highly disappointed in what Jonathan Hickman is doing with the X-Men right now. I explained a lot about why in my last weekly wrap-up, so I will link that. And second is Cable Volume 3, which is also part of my X-Men read. Also talked about this a lot in my last weekly wrap-up. This wasn't as bad. Cable is a very confusing character to wrap your head around, and Gerry Duggan does his best to work with all of that crazy backstory Cable has and tries to create an emotional through arc for him in this series that I think kind of worked, but also it's really hard to have an emotional through arc for Cable considering all that he is. Time travel, universe hopping, clones, all of the above Cable deals with. So yeah, like, they weren't terrible, but they also weren't great, and I'm just not happy with the mutants right now. It takes a lot to really get me over a 3 or a 3.5 for these books, so the fact that they're both 3.5 means that there's enough from me that I liked that was a tiny bit more than average, but overall, having a disappointing time with X-Men, even though I'm still continuing to read everything because I guess I'm just a masochist. The other digital 3.5 that I read was Clean Sweep by Ilona Andrews, which is the first book in the Innkeeper Chronicles. Yeah, talked about it in the past, mentioned the second book briefly in my 3-star section, so we will move on. Next 3.5 is Minor Detail by Adania Shibli. This is a very short novella translated from a Palestinian work, and it is about these 2 timelines where in a more modern day, this woman becomes completely obsessed with this event that happened right after a year after the Nakba, the catastrophe that really started the eradication of Palestinians in Palestine. And in this past event, a young Bedouin woman her entire family is murdered. She's captured by these Jewish soldiers, and horrific things happen. And the woman in our present time gets hung up on this minor detail. And the minor detail is that the event happened 25 years exactly on the day that she was born. So this is a very interesting novella, devastating novella, deals with heavy topics. I see the point that was being made. I see the literature, like the literary storytelling that she was doing, but it didn't quite hit me as much as I wished it would. But I'm not upset that I read it. Last 3.5, finally a book I have not talked about yet because I just finished it this week. That is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. My book club is reading this in August, so of course I have already finished it. Picked it up because I love this cover. The pink is gorgeous. I really should take these stickers off. Thankfully, Barnes & Nobles lets you take them off really quickly. So this is essentially, people are going to say it's a mystery, and maybe there is a mystery that is happening, but it is literary drama. It is a family saga that is wrapped up in these events where in the present timeline, which takes place in the 60s. This is historical fiction too. So I believe it's 65 is the present timeline. 75. 1975 is the present timeline, and at this summer camp, a camper goes missing, and the girl is the daughter of the rich family that lives next to the camp and owns the camp and everything, all the land around it. And about 12 years before, her little brother, she wasn't born yet, but her little brother also went missing during a summer that the camp was there. So we follow a bunch of campers, we follow some police officers, we follow and untangle the roots of this rich family. So in that fashion, it is a family drama. This plays fast and loose with the timelines, so you're bopping back and forth all through time with different characters as the plot and the story and the drama unfolds. I found it very intriguing. It was a little slow going to start with, but I want to say once I got to, I don't know, about a third of the way through, the pace really picked up, even though it is literary. Literary to me usually means slower, but the pace really picked up. Now, when I first finished it, I was like, oh, that was great for 4.5 stars. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've sat with it, it kind of went down to a 3.5. But that doesn't mean anything bad on the book itself. This is just, I think, where the story went and the reveal of the mysteries, that wasn't quite as satisfying as I wanted. But where the strength of this is really is in the character work and the character relations and the untangling of the messy relationships that are this entire family, this entire summer camp, this entire town have all wrapped up in these disappearances. Liz Moore really does a great job playing with the timelines, going back and forth, getting into different characters' heads, showing you different perspectives. Like, technically, this is great work. Like, and she's a great writer too. Like, she isn't so literary that, you're choking on purple prose, but her prose is just really engaging. She just gets to the heart of stuff without feeling like she's making you read. I don't know if that makes sense. I didn't feel like reading this was a task. I was just along for the ride. I was pulled along effortlessly. It's effortless. Her prose is effortless. That's the word I'm looking for. It was great. Maybe I'm talking myself back up to a 4-star. I don't know. I'm seesawing between 3.5 or 4, but honestly, this was a good read. I'm not upset that I bought it. I'm not upset that I read it. So yeah, The God of the Woods, it's popping off right now. It's a big hit right now. So definitely check it out. But just go into this expecting more of a literary historical fiction, family saga, drama kind of thing going on with other characters too, rather than a mystery or a thriller. If anyone tells you it's a mystery or thriller, no, don't listen to that. Go into this as a literary family drama historical fiction with a really strong mystery element, and you will not be disappointed. So God of the Woods, 3.5, but I'm probably gonna change it to a 4 again. Yeah, so maybe that's me trying to, this was the last thing I read this month, so maybe that's just me desperately trying to make the month end on a good note. I don't know. So also this book, it's very thick, and I got through it in literally like 2 days. It was compelling, and like I said, her writing is effortless, so definitely check it out. Okay, no plain 4 stars, but we're on to 4.5, and that is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. This was an advanced reader copy graphic novel. I have talked about this at length. I really enjoyed it. Very Berenstain Bears, Richard Scarry, but make it a serial killer a la Dexter. But yeah, link down below. If it sounds interesting at all, please go watch that section of the video. I really enjoyed this, and if it's intriguing at all, definitely check it out when it comes out. I don't remember exactly when it comes out, but I will put the date here for the release date. If it sounds interesting at all to you, check it out. We're ending on a high note. My 5 stars, I'm going to bring these up first because I talked about them a lot at the start of the month. I read the first 2 novels at the end of June, so those were my June wrap-up. Talked about these in the first month of this month, the first weekly wrap-up of this month. So this is the other book, the Other Worlds books Depend on the Bean Counter, volumes 3 and 4, which I read technically in July. Love this manga series. It's an isekai where this man is accidentally pulled along with the Holy Maiden into another world, and he ends up being an accountant for the palace, and he ends up in a sort of weird relationship with this captain of the third guard, and I just like it. This is the one where I'm talking about where, like, manga, I don't count this as BIPOC for diversity. I do count it as LGBTQIA for diversity because it is about a romance between the 2 main male characters. I love this series. I've been in, like, you've seen all my DNFs here. You're seeing all the 3 and 3.5 stars that I have. I think I'm going to reread these just to feel better. I did a reread of a favorite book. I will talk about that in my next weekly wrap up. And that was comforting, and I actually kind of want to reread all 4 volumes, so I may end up doing that. So don't be surprised if you see these again soon. My next 5 star was The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is a fantasy novella about this knight Maddie. Beautiful cover. She is disgraced in some fashion. You do find out why. And she figures out that the only way to bring back her name back to good graces is to go get this fireborn blade. And to do that, she has to go into a dragon's lair, this White Queen, and get the blade from the dragon's lair. Now, that's pretty straightforward, but this ended up being surprisingly a lot more than that. There's magic. There's a lot of interludes where it's like historical, what's the word? Writings of past knights and squires who have tried to get the blade and all the horrific things that have happened to them because of dragons and dragon magic. So there's a lot packed in this little novella, and I'm so glad that we're getting a sequel in just a couple of months now. I had a lot of fun with this. I linked down below where I've talked about in the past. Maybe if I covered, I probably did cover a little bit more in my where I talked what weekly wrap up I talked about this in, but yeah, this was just so much fun, and I am so excited to get to the second novella. Don't read the second novella synopsis until you read this because it will spoil you. So yeah, Fireborn Blade, 5 stars. Finally, we're going to talk about my surprise favorite of the month, 5-star hit, and that is The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This is a YA modern fantasy about dark witches, dark magic, demon magic. It's about feminism. It's about fighting back. It's about finding your power. It's about survival and dealing with PTSD. The reason I call it a surprise is that it takes a lot now for me to like YA novels, a lot, and this did so much. I talk about this at length. I'm linking it down below. Read it, give it a chance. I just loved it. And I'm so glad that I have this very pretty, the rose gold never comes up on camera pretty well, but it's just very pretty. So yeah, absolute surprise hit of the year for me. This is going to be in my top 10. We'll see if it stays there. I think it has a good chance of staying up there, but yeah. Go check out my previous weekly wrap up where I talk about this, because if it sounds good at all to you, and if it sounds good at all with more information that I have in that weekly wrap up, give it a try. I just really enjoyed this. Like, yeah, I'm still surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I'm thinking back on it fondly. Also kind of want to reread it. Like, I don't know. I'm feeling like maybe August is going to be a reread month. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. Short and sweet. Yeah, I've talked about the books a lot and I didn't really want to go into too much. Maybe that's not as satisfying for a wrap up, but honestly, oh my God. I'm so sorry if you can hear those sirens. That's very loud. Okay, they're passing. I see the truck. Goodbye, truck. And another one. Okay, we're good. I didn't want to make this very long. It's a beautiful day. It's a very hot, almost 100 degrees here in Southern California, but I love the heat and I want to go out and sit under a tree in a park and see if I can get some reading done. It has been a really crappy reading week. Like last week sucked with all my DNFs, all my low stars, and I haven't really gotten the groove back. Like God of the Woods was great, but the groove is not there. I am like picking stuff up and reading 2 or 3 pages and putting it down. So I want to dive into something, and I hope that, I don't know, something. So maybe just keeping on rereading my favorite series is going to get me back into that love of reading, but we'll see. Sometimes just being at the park and being outside in the warmth instead of trapped in the frigid AC does me a lot of good too. So we'll see how it goes. K-pop song of the day. I didn't prepare. What's coming to mind? EXO, one of my faves. EXO, Love Me Right. This is one of the, I got into K-pop in 2015, and EXO, one of the first groups that I really enjoyed, and Love Me Right is one of the first songs that came out. I think it came out in 2015. I don't know. That's a lot of stuff to say. Go listen to the song. It's linked down below. Thank you for watching. Even if this wasn't a very satisfying video, please go check out where I talk about everything. Everything's going to be linked down below. Hopefully editing this is not going to be long, so I'm going to spend more of that time organizing everything down below. Please appreciate how organized everything is. Okay? All right. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye.